Welcome to Home Care, Doors Open, where we discuss licensing, operations, and scaling your home care business. Whether you're just opening your doors or looking to unlock new doors to growth and success, this podcast is for you. Let's begin.
Welcome, everybody. This is Lucas Carroll from Home Care Doors Open podcast. We have a special guest with us today. This is Rick Dyer, who's the vice president at InPro Insurance Group. Hey, Rick.
Hey, Lucas. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for joining us today. Super excited to be talking with you, talking about all things home care.
Sounds great. Love it.
Well, first, I just want to get started and ask you if you could just tell me a little bit about kind of the area of home care that you focus on, that you touch for your role.
Okay, yeah. So I run our home care program over here at InPro. It's something we've been active in about 12 years now. I've led it up for about 9.5 years. We do the entire country except for Alaska and Hawaii. We're one of the few agents that can also specialize in startups, whether it's franchise or independent. We've got a mixture of both. We're still probably about 60 to 65% unskilled, about 35% skilled. Obviously, some have a little mix in there. But yeah, we love working with the home care owners and all the employees, and it's really been a great program for us.
That's awesome. I didn't realize the mix of skilled and unskilled. That's a good mix. Is it for the clients that you work with that are skilled home health versus non-skilled? Is there major differences when it comes to insurance offerings that you offer or that they need?
Yeah, definitely. Although it's interesting because even the unskilled, a lot of the carriers are really looking for either experienced owners, experience in the healthcare space, or having a relationship with an RN. As far as skilled goes, there's much more documentation required versus what type of skilled care are you providing? How are you making sure that the staff is properly trained, evaluating, and they really like to track right down to the specific functions that the skilled employees are doing. That's probably the biggest difference. And there is some significant carrier changes. Some carriers really like and welcome skilled. Some carriers like to have a mixture of unskilled and skilled, and different carriers will have different caps on both to make sure that they're really the right fit for that specific carrier.
And one of the reasons that I was really excited to be talking with you is just how our worlds intersect between licensure and compliance for non-skilled and then for skilled agencies, and the timing of it. Can you speak to a little bit about maybe your experiences in working with home care owners, home care clients that you have, and what the troubles that maybe they run into when it comes to compliance and licensure and timing that out with the insurance needs that they have?
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel exactly the same way. I was so happy when we kind of connected and can kind of work on all of this stuff together. On the insurance side, one of the greatest challenges I have often with, especially if it's a startup, is really expressing to them how crucial it is to get started on the insurance process as soon as possible. A lot of times they might be new to even to the business world, or at least purchasing commercial insurance. And I think it's a lot like the licensure. It can take a lot longer than they would expect. There's a lot of, I think, underwriting on both sides of getting the right documentations together. On the insurance side, for example, a non-home care business, we would tell them, we want to start, 60, 90 days out from their projected start date to really start the process. In the home care space, we've got agreements with carriers. They like as much time as possible, and we can greatly reduce that. We really try to get it done within 30 days, 2 weeks at the absolute minimum. But it can be a challenge at different times of the years. And I think that's where you and I often intersect, where we'll have someone struggling to work on getting their license in a state. At the same time, we're trying to get insurance. And sometimes, as you well know, it can be, well, we want to see your insurance to apply for the license, or, hey, we've got our license and now we need the insurance right away. And I think that's where you and I often, exchange phone calls and emails. Hey, I've got somebody in Colorado where, they've had their insurance in place for a period of time. They still can't get their license. And I think that's one of the especially post-COVID, one of the biggest challenges we've seen is, some states are really good about it. Some carriers are really good about it. Some carriers are, hey, geez, we need 45 days to properly underwrite this, and we've got to push them. But at the same time, some states are, well behind the program and getting everyone's licenses out on time, or at least in a timely fashion. Sure.
I agree. And the conversations that we've had before in working with clients is that it's nice because the timing of it, whether it's a new franchise or a new office and they're just getting up and going and they need their initial license, or a change of ownership. If there's a change of ownership from one to the other, it's a similar transition and licensing period, but they still need to show general liability and sometimes a bond or something like that. And the timing of it is so crucial because there can be, based on the carrier and the state, it sounds like there can be different periods of time in which to get a policy in force.
Yeah, absolutely.
See, one of the other things I was wanting to see, like if I'm a home care owner or a client, or I want to be, what are some, maybe if you could run down, because I don't think you do a really good job of kind of explaining the different types of coverage. And for somebody who's thinking about getting in the business, somebody who's at the very beginning, or even an experienced and existing home care owner, they may not know what all coverages are available or some things to think about. Could you give us just kind of a summary of maybe some common coverages?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really interesting in a timely topic. I was helping a woman yesterday who, she had 25 years experience as an RN, and she had ran hospital systems and home cares for other people, and she started her own up a year ago, and she just got whatever insurance she could. And then, she's 8-9 months into it, and she's like, oh, I'm starting to really get pushback. And I met her at a conference. We started going through it, and the coverages were just completely off. Home care is its really unique niche. It's very different than traditional business insurance. Normal business insurance, if I work for you, Lucas, and there's a claim that develops, Kara can call you and say, hey, tell me about Rick. Oh, yeah, he was in the office. This is what happened. It's a legitimate claim. Versus home care, a lot of the claims are going to happen outside of the office, oftentimes in someone's home or a facility. There's maybe not that same level of supervision. So on the home care side, they're really looking for your policies and procedures, but the coverages that line up with it, everyone kind of knows and understands general liability, but the professional liability becomes crucial. And one of the areas we really try to help people out is the abuse and molestation coverage. It's very common to find, like for this woman yesterday, for example, she had like $100,000 total in abuse. We really try to make sure the abuse is at least at $500,000. In most cases, try to have it actually match the general liability and professional liability limits of $1 million occurrence, $3 million aggregate. That's kind of the first thing we look at. The second area we look at, unfortunately, the last couple of years has become a bigger issue, is what we call hired and non-owned auto. An owner will say, well, I don't have a vehicle. I don't want auto coverage. But that coverage really is there because you have caregivers driving to client locations, sometimes taking clients to doctor's appointments, running errands. Again, we want to make sure you have full coverage in that space. The other one that we really look at that's still part of the commercial package policy is the crime coverage. Of course, you want to have crime coverage to cover your business, but again, one of the things that makes home care unique is you want what's called client's property or third party, where, again, protecting your clients in their home, having maybe a more robust crime package or at least a higher limit to cover caregivers being in someone's home. The other big coverages we tend to look at are workers' compensation, obviously. Again, you've got unsupervised employees in someone's home that can incur injuries. The other one that sometimes people forget about, though, is what we call EPLI, or employment practices liability. It's crucial. If you're a new business owner or just even an existing one, it's coverage that's going to help protect you from employee claims in the hiring process, training, terminating employees, wage and hour in most states. And the other thing I like about that is a lot of the carriers we use will provide you with additional resources. We share with them, hey, here's your policies for hiring. They can provide tips, best practices, etc. Or if you think you have a claim, most of them will even have free attorney consultations on, hey, I just did this. I had an uneasy feeling about it. You can call in. It doesn't count against you. And you get some free legal advice to help you manage that situation. So those are the kind of the traditionally large ones that are in home care. The other thing that's really popped up in this past year has been cyber.
I was gonna ask, and that I'm sure you have some fun stories around cyber.
Oh, it's crazy. For years, even in the insurance world, we kind of looked at it as, okay, we're going to give you some cyber protection to protect you, but obviously the quote unquote bad guys are going for larger targets. In the last couple of years, we've really noticed a trend where they are going after either the vendors to the home care industry so they can get to the ultimate home care owners, or directly to the home care operations. We've really worked with a couple of some of the best carriers to build a really unique cyber product, because you want to address just all the facets of it. And it's not just third party or first party, or it's your clients. We kind of have realized they actually go after home cares because of all the employee data. If you're a large home care, you're operating, you have some turnover, you're collecting, storing, and managing a lot of employee data as well, Social Security numbers, things of that nature. So we really try to help all the owners, hey, understand this is what you're getting and why. And, you might say, well, I'm not that connected, but again, you're using software, scheduling software. Your employees, they all have cell phones. Some of them have access to your systems. There's a larger risk there than most people, I think, realize.
Absolutely. And to tee that up, if I'm saying that right, the cyber protection would be if it's your electronic software and the client software and where you store information for staff members and how secure that is and that somebody else could get access to it.
Correct.
And when you say go ahead. I was going to say first and third party. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah. So first party coverage is going to be, in layman's terms, damage you bring on yourself, right? So they hack you directly. We've had incidences of a company laptop getting stolen and then breaking through that. Third party has really, in the last 12 months, really been a red flag. That's where you contract with another vendor, a scheduling company, a software company, and they get hacked, and in effect hampers you or hurts you either financially, access, etc. So you always want to make sure your cyber policy has both that third-party protections as well as first-party, because you can do everything right yourself, and you can assume that some of these larger software companies, they're doing everything. We've kind of learned the hard way. Literally everybody is a possible target for these cyber hackers. And quite honestly, I was talking to a long-term customer earlier in the week who been with us like 10 years. And he said, geez, Rick, my cyber policy seems to change a little bit every year. And it's like, it does, because they're constantly coming up with, new ways to phish your emails, farm your emails, hack your systems. And the carriers are just trying to do the best job, not just only to provide coverage for you, but to provide some protections for you too. Because again, it's a constantly changing environment.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big one.
This episode is powered by the Business of Senior Care. The Business of Senior Care helps home care, home health, and hospice companies obtain their state home care license and accreditation through one-on-one consulting, fully customized policies, and years of expertise. To learn more, visit thebizofseniorcare.com. And now, back to our episode.
What are some, if you're a home care owner and you're starting out and, you're opening up and you're securing some of this coverage, over like a 1 to 3 year period or something like that in the beginning, what are claims, like how often, or what are claims that could happen or typically do happen?
Yeah, the biggest ones we see with startup, and I would, if you contact us and we work with you, we're going to spend a lot of time on your policies and procedures. The big areas you see right off the bat fall into that employment practices. If you're not experienced in hiring, training, and terminating employees, you really want to shore up those areas. Really make sure you're tapping into strong policies, procedures, and just some basic things of, how you treat one, you want to treat all. that's an area where we will see a new owner starting out, or kind of to your point, you make an acquisition, you've always been managing it this way, the person you bought was managing it differently. You want to get a handle on that really quick, because if there's any friction there, every employee driving home will see the billboards, call so-and-so to file a claim. So that's definitely one area. The second area is the workers' comp. And this is where I think even with non-medical companion care, where carriers are starting to ask for, hey, do you have a care manager? Do you have someone reviewing this, an RN you can talk to? And it's not just to say, oh, make sure they don't do, accidentally do skilled care. It's to hopefully have somebody who has some training on just the basics, repositioning patients, lifting, trip hazards, just in general care. I really stress with a lot of my owners, if they're starting out, they really need to do an in-depth client evaluation before you start with anybody. And it's things sometimes people will miss. Is there a spot for the caregiver to park? Is it well lit? Is there trip hazards? Do they have a big dog? Is there other people inside the home? Things of that nature. And a lot of times you can avoid some of those claims by working not just with the client, but also with the employees to say, hey, you're going to, Mr. Smith's house. This is the things you want to look out for. If something changes, let them know. I think the other one we will sometimes get, and I used to always tell this story, is on the abuse side. So sometimes you'll take over a client where it's been maybe one particular family member, just for example purposes, taking care of grandma. That person's been taking care of her for 6, 7, 8 months. They're tired. They make the call to the home care. Hey, I need some help. I noticed an interesting trend where they start to get help, and it's a little bit, they're still there. Home care operator is there. They get that sense of relief, and maybe they take a step back. And time after time, I talk to owners, and it's like that person providing that primary care, they don't check in 3, 4, 6 months. Then all of a sudden they do. And it's been enough time where they've kind of have forgotten how hard it was. And they see that loved one for the first time. And, they've aged in 6 months. And if someone's in their 80s, 90s, and the appearance might have gone down or be different, and they kind of have that panic or maybe even a guilt feeling like, oh, grandma looks worse than she did 4 or 5 months ago. And they overreact. So I tell a lot of my owners to avoid a claim like that. More communication than you would even think is right. Not just, yep, she's doing fine. Oh, we talked to her about this. We did this. We got her up. We got her moving. Things like that to kind of ease them. And then finally, if you ever have either your caregiver or the owner notice even the slightest change, just keeping the family involved in that. But those, again, are kind of the key areas where we see that a claim can develop if you're just starting out. And you're getting used to that and how much care and communication is really involved in it.
Yeah, I totally agree. To hit on that point you were talking about, the one you do for one, you do for all. And we've had conversations with clients that are coming on, with us, and we develop their policies and procedures. That's in their state, and each state is different in terms of how you onboard a staff member and how the background check process works, whether or not you need to do a drug test. There's some states have an additional adult protective services database that needs to be searched. There's certain training topics that need to be sure to be trained upon, like abuse and neglect or something like that. And try and hit home every time on how important it is to follow first, to have a standardized onboarding process with the correct information and the correct forms. Because if you do it each time, every time with every person that you onboard, if there's a claim that arises out of it, they're going to go back to were they educated around abuse and neglect? Did you do the background check properly? Did you follow all the steps? And I think, you could speak to that, but I think it helps in terms of mitigation for a potential claim if you do the same for every person that you onboard, and for that person that's involved in the claim, you did everything that you possibly could in the initial.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. And that's what most of the carriers are looking for. Tell us what your policies and procedures are, and show me that you're maintaining that level of consistency for not just for every employee, but every administrative employee as well. That's the other thing I really focus on with especially new owners. Okay, you're starting out, you're doing this, you're on top of it. You start to grow and you hire someone. It's crucial that you emphasize those exact same. These are how we do it. You spot check them. You're always involved in that process. But yeah, you absolutely nailed it.
What,
You have to have those policies.
I remember you saying something about family members and the potential for like you get the 2-for-1 special, right? So if you're a
Yep.
home care company and you get the call, hey, my granddaughter watches my mom, and if you can have her as a client if you have my granddaughter as a caregiver, and then you're like, oh, okay, that's so great because you get two all of a sudden at the same time. Um, but in some circumstances, you may lax your onboarding process.
Yeah. Yeah. We had a real rash of that a couple of years ago. And I think I should say not every, but most carriers finally caught on to that. And I always tell owners, hey, you can absolutely do that, but you really need to stress to that family member, hey, fantastic. But both the client and the caregiver have to go through your policies and procedures. That's a great example. That's one where you treat that potential employee just like they, called in an ad, came off the street, put them through that whole same rigorous process to make sure they're a good fit for your agency and a good fit for any future clients. That's the best way to highlight it. Because what we had happening was people say, okay, great. As an owner, you remember, okay, she's only going to work with grandma in this example. You have a hire scheduler, they're pressed, someone calls off. Oh, this person's in the database, they're active. You call, you send her out there, not realizing, oh, she's never gone through the background checks. If something goes wrong, wow, it becomes a real mess real quick. So yeah, that's a great example of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm trying to think of other. You always have the best stories for for these types of claims.
Yeah.
Always interesting.
Yeah, we oftentimes here we'll be talking about them after the fact or as the claim gets settled, just looking back on. You could write a book with some of this stuff. It's just, and again, especially in this industry, and one of the reasons why I like this and kind of really chose this niche is I love the people in it. Almost every owner has a great story. They're coming at it from, usually a personal story for themselves or just a genuine kindness of wanting to help others out. And it's sometimes hard as the insurance guy to say, look, I get it. You want to go to first of, hey, trusting everybody that comes in and does this. But we've just seen so many crazy stories that it's like, trust, but verify, make sure they pass and put through all of the procedures to make sure they're a good fit for you. Absolutely.
One of the things I was thinking about for coverages is that in terms of carriers and products, that they're not all created equal.
Yeah.
And that even the same coverages amounts between carriers and how claims work. Maybe sure if you could share a little bit about your experience on carriers that support kind of the home care market and then
Yeah.
those that are on the outside but still write policies for it and how that could impact you as a business owner.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's become, in this year, I've seen kind of more of this than probably the other 8, where there are a handful of really, really good carriers who not only know and understand this industry, but are committed to it. There's other ones where, so in insurance, I'll try not to bore people to death, but there's 2 things we look at it, admitted carriers and not admitted carriers, sometimes called excess and surplus. So an admitted carrier is going to be a carrier that in your specific state is guaranteed and backed by that state. In layman's terms, again, kind of follow the rules and regulations of that state. But those carriers tend to have higher limits, better coverages. And again, they're kind of committed and get and understand the home care space. And that's crucial when you have a claim or a potential claim and you want to talk to somebody before it develops into something scary and expensive. There is a whole nother side of these excess and surplus carriers where they basically say, yeah, we'll write in this space, but they're not typically as active in it. And they're going to typically either have lower limits or they're going to have more what we call exclusions, more limited coverage. There is a place in time for those, but if you're starting out, it's a lot easier to just start with an A-rated carrier, start with an admitted carrier, follow those rules and regulations. And you want to make sure that you're getting those higher level of coverages. And the other interesting thing about that is oftentimes that admitted carrier is actually going to be less expensive than the non-admitted carrier. And so, sometimes owners will say, well, why did my agent put this with me? They should have done this. Not every agent is going to have access to those home care specific carriers. As this industry has kind of developed, again, especially post-COVID, more carriers have started to say, well, we're going to offer these products to agents and agencies that have a history in the home care space, because they're kind of looking at us to either work with the owners, work with the different franchisors to make sure some of these policies and procedures we've talked about, but also make sure that at least all these new owners are being offered all the various lines of insurance. Commercial insurance, they really want to partner with these owners. So, they're going to offer an umbrella right off the bat. They're going to make, at least offer cyber coverage, EPLI, things of that nature. They don't really want uncovered claims either. They want you to know and understand, hey, why are these coverages here? Why are they important? Because they know that's going to help the overall success of that business long term.
Yeah, for sure. And I think when we do the licensure with our clients, oftentimes we'll run into questions, because in most states you need to have an active, at least general liability policy in place as part of the application process. And they'll have questions about the premiums and the costs related to it. And then seeing you can possibly go out and find an insurance policy where the premium looks pretty attractive. But maybe you could speak to what it would take, it takes one claim, right? What would, for picking a low end type of insurance, when it comes time for a claim, how could that impact the owner?
Yeah, that's a great point. I'll take the second part first. The challenge with the impact is if you this could go with workers' comp, this can go with abuse and molestation, professional liability. If you get a policy that maybe doesn't cover one of those lines or has a low limit to it, it can create real problems. Or the part I don't like is taking a step back. When I started this 9 years ago, the typical owner would talk to me about, hey, I have to have higher limits. It was really just being developed as a niche. People were used to very low limits, or what we call sub limits, and owners quickly realized, hey, this isn't enough coverage for what I'm doing. As time has shifted on, owners have really, the experienced best practice ones, they come to me and say, we want that duty to defend. We want a carrier who knows home care, because there's a higher chance that you're going to get, I don't want to necessarily say a fraudulent claim, but a miscommunication claim, and they want that carrier resources to do that. And that ties into your question. If you're, not to pick on Lloyd's of London, but Lloyd's of London will have these syndicates underneath. They'll write you a GL policy tomorrow that's very limited, no other lines. You apply for your license. They're not going to know or have the capacity to combat a claim for you. Or they're going to have, we converted one yesterday for a woman in Maryland off of one of those policies. Her abuse coverage, we were talking a little bit about it, was at 50,000 or 100, 50,000 occurrence, 100,000 total. If you get a bad abuse claim, one, they're probably not going to be able to cover it, or they're going to look at it and say, boy, this is going to get expensive quick. We'll kick in the 50, good luck to you. Then you got to go get your own attorney, paid for the differences if you lose it. The person filing against you is going to see that attorney, you only have 50,000 there. They're going to target that, knowing they can put pressure on you. Versus if you're with a good carrier who's got $1 million limit in that abuse, they're going to have $1 million on the line. They're going to work with you, get your story. They're going to help defend and protect you and protect your whole business. Obviously, if you lose one of those claims and there's not coverage there and you have to come out of pocket, it can literally wipe somebody out. We've seen that with some of the cyber claims we had earlier this year, when people either didn't have any cyber or only had first party and didn't have third party. Claims today, and this isn't just in the home care space, but in commercial insurance in general, there's a thing we talk a lot about behind the scenes called social inflation. Claims that 9 years ago I think there was a stat that the average abuse claim was, 88, $90,000. The average one now is like 380.
Wow.
And so that's not taking into attorney's fees and the time you had to spend and all these other things. So getting those things correct can be huge for your business and can really be the difference of you succeeding or not. The last kind of point on that, and I'll switch this to workers' comp. Workers' comp, it's absolutely crucial. And I could bore everyone to tears with various stats about how quick and how well does a carrier respond. There's kind of an inside, it's been proven out. If an injured employee is off for 6 weeks, there's like a 99% chance they don't come back. So if you think there's a claim, you want to be calling your agent, you want to be calling your carrier, you want to make sure someone's on that from day one, going to a clinic, getting drug screened. It's important, even if it's not a full caregiver job, do you offer return to work programs? And again, the whole secret behind is getting them up, getting them moving, getting them engaged again. It's will reduce the expense of that claim and maybe save that employee for you. And workers' comp, they evaluate your loss history on basically a rolling 4-year period where they don't look at the current year, but the 3 prior. So a loss in that, 2 years ago, you'll still be paying for it for a couple of years. So all this stuff is really, really crucial because it can affect you now, but also long term.
Yeah. And I think that's good. And to put kind of a rosy point on it, not that it's all claims and bad stuff, but the advantage of working with an experienced person to help you and making sure you have the right coverages. And yes, at times you would be paying a little bit more, but really the peace of mind of knowing how wide the possibilities are, because I was writing down the coverages as you listed them, just the typical coverages, and I think I got to 7 types of coverages.
Yeah.
And they're all important, but if you don't know what you don't know, and you don't want to find out when there's a claim that comes through for that. So I think the value of knowing how wide the space is in terms of protection and coverages, and then the carriers that you can get access to, that if there is a claim, they are familiar with what that is. They have the opportunity to help you to work through that claim, and usually a better outcome for that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's you hit the nail on the head. That's the biggest thing that I see. Right from the beginning, I try to make sure that every single owner knows these are what the coverages do. This is obviously how much they are. Here's the best way to protect it. And if you get a claim, here's what we're going to do and how we're going to respond. And I always, I will tell a lot of people if I meet them at a conference, a big part of my job, quite honestly, is evaluating carriers. We get approached all the time. And one of the first things I ask them is, tell me about your experience in home care. If you get this type of claim, who are we calling? What's their background? How successful have you been? And it's really, really been eye-opening for me, especially even on the workers' comp space, where you'll talk to somebody and it's like, well, we're just going to do what we normally do. And it's like, whoa, that doesn't work with home care. It's people touching people in their homes. So you can't just assume you're going to get that same data and information. How are you going to help me if, we'll get a lot of claims in the home care space where even the client didn't witness it. Person was helping in the kitchen, slipped, fall. We had one recently, the person was loading a dishwasher. She went to check on the client, forgot she left the dishwasher door open, came back in the room, tripped, fell, hurt herself pretty badly. And the client's like, yeah, I heard something, but I didn't see anything.
Yeah. So,
okay, how are we going to provide care to this employee? How are we going to follow up? And, what are some of the best practices to make sure it's legitimate? If it's legitimate, we want the employee healthy, return as quick as possible. If there's some questions there, what avenues do you have available to you to make sure it's not a fraudulent claim or an exaggerated claim?
Perfect. That's awesome. I think that might be a great place to kind of wrap up as far as bringing it back out to, knowing, working with a trusted professional and knowing, making sure you understand what the full spectrum is of getting into home care and how important, especially to a new business, even an existing business, how critical one claim could be for the operation of your business. And I mean, claims obviously they're hopefully if, for a home care owner, they're few and far between.
Yep.
But you want to have that peace of mind that if something were to ever happen, that you feel good about how your coverage looks and you can continue to operate your business.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's what we really try to strive ourselves on because we realize, again, like you said, hopefully you'll go years not having one, but all of a sudden happens, you kind of jolt like, oh, what do I do now? Who do I call? Where do I go? You want to make sure, hey, resources are there and ready to respond for you.
Absolutely. Well, Rick, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for taking some time to enlighten our audience on the world of home care as it relates to insurance, and thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate it. Always a pleasure talking to you, and take care.
If you found this conversation valuable, please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Also, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Business of Senior Care. We'll see you next time on Home Care. Doors open.